Hello, world, and welcome to Car Biz Leaders Live. My name is Rachel Blatt, and I'm the CEO of Royalty Logistics. Today, with me, I have a very special guest, Kiefer Bartel, who has the most awesome podcast. And if you haven't checked it out, it's so amazing. And he's the director of sales over at Tom Cadlick Honda and a rock star. And I'm so excited for you guys to get into it. So let's bring him on and get this party started. So awesome. Here we go.
Hey,
Hi, Peter.
Hey,
How are you?
Good. That was actually a really nice introduction. I think it might have been a little bit nicer than most, so I do appreciate that.
Well, I firmly believe that with like all of my heart, though. I mean, and I think that is the darn truth. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know I did a little pre-introduction, but give us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, I've been in the car business for almost a decade now. Started out as a sales consultant, really worked my way through the different pieces of the car business, and just kind of grew with it, and that's kind of been the focus for me for the last decade. And obviously I launched my podcast I think it's about 5 months ago.
Yeah.
It really was designed to, which you were a guest on the show, so
Yeah.
I would assume some people have listened to that episode, but which was really designed to just help people in the sales business, because what I found was there's a whole ton of things out there that teach you how to sell more, but there's also a lot of just learning how to deal with different people, different situations. And I think a lot of times when people get to a certain point in their career, they forget what it was like being the new person.
Right.
And the show really kind of always keeps me, it always reminds me of what that's like. Because after you've done it for a decade, or after you've done it for 5 or 20 years, whatever the number is, I think it's really easy to forget what that first week is like. Sure. And what that's like, not maybe having the answer to everything, or not knowing who to ask for the answer. So really the show was kind of a project of mine that kind of just slowly developed. And I said, hey, I was having a lot of great conversations with people like you. And I said, look, if other people got a chance to listen to it, it could probably help. And that was the birth of it.
Yeah, I think the podcasting is very like new and exciting. It's sort of a mode that more and more people, as you listen to the same songs on the radio, the news is all, negative, and there's not a lot of like positive forces going on. And I think more and more people are listening to it on their cars on the way to work. More and more people are getting into the podcasts. I mean, there's just so many, and it's just a fun medium too, because, if you can cut it. And I'm doing this live thing and I think it's fun, but it's also very scary too. So if you're not like a camera person, then I think it's a sort of a safer way to kind of go about getting your message out there for sure.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing, I've always found that I've been fairly successful at taking something that I know nothing about, and really learning, taking as much data in as I can and learning as much as I can about it, and then finding a way to then launch whatever it is. And when I got into the podcast, I knew nothing about it at all. And and I think like you get into a really creative space because you don't know anything. And you have no preconceived notions, and you have no, well, this is how it's supposed to be. I had some friends that did some really, really great shows. So obviously I had something to live up to, but at the same time, I wasn't, I don't have a degree in audio engineering. I don't have it. So I had to figure it out on my own. So,
yeah. Well, my husband was like, I was playing a song and he's like, oh, the audio on the song sucks. And I was like, he's like, you need a whole stereo system. I was like, whoa. I'm like, because you can kind of like invest a lot of money into like making it really sound great and get out there. But what do you think if you're just getting started into kind of like stretching outside of yourself? What do you think kind of, pushed you in that direction? Or what was your inspiration behind that?
It really came down to like creativity and creative passion is a huge thing for me. And I kind of felt like I hadn't came up with any new ideas in a while. And I kind of felt like, I was kind of just going through the motions about some of my thinking, and I wasn't like being really creative. And that's like the part that I love about myself. So I kind of hit a point where I said, I got to find a way to do it different.
Right.
And I wanted to have something too that was about the guest. It wasn't just about me,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
I think sometimes it's really easy to make it about ourselves, and I think if I did an episode, if all the episodes were about me, it would be 5 people would watch it, maybe my mom and like some relatives, but after that, it just wouldn't be interesting. So I had to, and thankfully, like the one thing with the auto industry I learned was there was a lot of people that were rooting for me that I didn't even know,
Right.
and uh, that part for me has been absolutely phenomenal. And I'd reached out to people that I'm like, there's no way they'll do the show, and they would be like, yeah, I'll do the show.
Yeah.
And that to me was like, wow, there is people that, number one, think similarly to I, and that they
Mhm.
wanted to see the business grow and change, because it's always evolving. But yeah, and we talked about, like, you brought up the point about having like state of the art, super expensive audio equipment,
Mhm.
and I had a similar conversation with my wife at the time, because she's very detail oriented and she's great at that. So her process, I always joke, is like thorough and immaculate. And I was like, hey, if I put any more work into making sure the audio is perfect, if I put any more work into making sure the
Right.
studio looks nice, I'm never going to get it done.
Yeah.
And I would encourage anybody that's thinking about it, just get started.
Yeah, my husband still checks my grammar on Facebook for me. You know?
No, don't worry. My wife does too. And she always like laughs at it. And I'm always like, hey, could you like read this to make sure it doesn't sound dumb? And she'll be like, okay, I'm going to start charging you a fee for this. She's like, I really just don't like it. But no, I mean, it's kind of a funny thing, but I do appreciate the fact that we're both very opposite.
Yes, I have that in my family too. And you have a gorgeous family. I'm so excited for you. Your little one is just adorable, and I just want to schmitten over that one. And I see your post on Facebook and everything like that. So coming up, you kind of created, you said you started in the car dealership and you sort of worked your way up.
Yeah.
Tell us about that journey. Tell us about how you took the steps to get to the next level. I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there that are, want to get to the next level. So how would you say that you got there? What are some of the pointers and the tips that you have for those people out there?
I got into the car business when I didn't have a family. I got into the car business when I wasn't married. And, I had the time and the ability to dedicate to that, where if I would have had to get into it now, it would have just been different. So I looking back on it, it's one of those things where it never makes sense at the time. And looking back on it, I can say, like, now it lines up. And at the time I really couldn't. And but the advice that I give, number one, anybody that actually wants to move up, the thing that I didn't have that now is available, social media makes it so much easier to get in touch with great people all over the world and great people all over the country that can teach you the things that you want to learn. And it's not about just reading one book and that's going to give you the answers. It's a combination of surrounding yourself with amazing people and surrounding yourself with a really good mentor that pushes you outside of your box, and really making that clear early on. I look at it and I look back at sales, and I think I talked about in one of the episodes of the show, there was probably 2 years where I really wasn't that good of a salesperson. And it's because I hadn't really committed to it yet in my mind.
Yeah.
When I made the commitment and I went all in on my thinking and believed in myself, that's when things started to change for me. So, 2 pieces of advice I'd always give is, number one, believe in your dreams and make sure people know what your dreams are. Number two, I would say really surround yourself and push yourself outside of your thinking, whether that's people that you surround yourself, whether it's reading books, whether it's getting a mentor, like those things have been extremely vital for me. And every time I think I like reach my cap of what I can learn, I go surround myself with somebody new. And
I like that idea. That's a great idea.
A lot of people don't do that, and they kind of find it like a stagnant point. And I've been there too. And it's just, okay, well, who else am I going to surround myself with? And then always my ever need for learning. Funny enough, if I think if my 6th grade teacher watches this, she'd say, hey, he hated school. But the truth of it is, like, I love learning more now than I ever have. And it's because I'm learning the things that I want to learn in the environment I want to learn it in. And So yeah, I would say a few things. Get yourself surrounded with the right people, really educate yourself and get as much content as you can.
Yeah.
The things that I learned about sales 10 years ago that I never embraced, and now they work fantastic for me.
Right.
So you really have to put yourself in the right frame of mind to want to learn. But I think a lot of times too, people don't even think it's possible. They don't think big enough to want to grow themselves into to more. You know, they see something and they say, "Oh, I wish I could do that someday."
Right.
And the truth of it is, like, if you wait for someday, chances are it won't happen,
Right.
or you're going to keep finding a way to talk yourself out of it.
Right.
So, I really encourage people to, surround themselves with the right people, read the right books, but really understand there's a grind to it, and there's years and years worth of hard work to it. I don't know very many people, and I'm sure you would agree with it, that find some sort of success in their life, or they do great in their career, or they do great with their family, that it happened overnight and that it happened instantly. And I think a lot of times, I think that's one of the biggest issues with social media. And I don't know if we might have talked about it on my show. We see all these flashy things and we see all these, cool things on Instagram or on Facebook. But the truth of it is, like, we miss all of the years of the hard work that it took to get there.
Right.
And that's the part that I think most people, that's the part that they quit at. They quit at the grind it takes to get to that level to achieve what's necessary.
Right.
And it's because it's hard, right? It's a lot of hours. You're building a business, right? And like, if anybody understands the amount of hours and work and all those things that go into it, it's incredible, so I think one of the things that really made it somewhat happen for me is the fact that I always tell people nobody will outwork me.
Right.
And when you embrace that type of thought process, you can get a lot done, even if you're not the most talented person, by just working harder than everybody else.
Yeah.
Because then your exposure to it, your exposure to all of those things, you just start, if you can work harder than everybody else, you just keep your eye open for like learning, you'll get most of the things you want. And then just trying to find a way to surround yourself with people that really believe in you. I think that's a key thing, is you surround yourself with people that want you to succeed. You surround yourself with people that believe in you. And that's something that, has really been beneficial to me in my career, because the truth of it is I couldn't get to some of the things that I've achieved, or even the thought process of launching a show, if I didn't have people around me that believe in me. And then the other point to that is, for me with my wife, is having that relationship where you both want each other to hit your goals.
That's awesome.
And a lot of people don't talk about that, like I think one of the best things in my life is the fact that her and I have a really, like, we always call it like a brutally honest relationship. Anybody that spends any time with us like laughs about it, but like it's true. We're open with each other. We know what our goals are. We know what we want to achieve. And then it's a game plan of how do we get each other there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, when you are both on the same page, it's just like, okay, then you can sort of team. Because, so I am a woman in automotive, obviously, and I have some women on the show. And one of the questions is about, we usually, and this is just the thing with women, is like, we always talk about balancing work and family. But I think more and more, my husband takes over a lot of that role now today too. Like, I could not do this without my husband. And I think when you have a strong support system who is willing to step in to sort of say, hey, I'm going to let you achieve this. I'm going to take this off your plate for you. I'm going to take he takes my son to all of his activities, stuff like that.
Wow.
And I think there is a true balance with men and work and family too. I really believe that.
Yeah.
Because I think as more and more, women are like, they're becoming more successful and achieving it. And it's like, how do you balance work and family? Well, I think the same thing goes with men. As men are stepping more into the role of the family, it's not just a man's world anymore. We're coming along. So I'm really proud of you for that. And that's the question. So like, how are you balancing work and family? Because I know you're very successful, Well,
there's 2 points that I want to talk about, but the part of that is incredibly hard, and the balance of making sure I spend enough time with my son, that's more important to me now than ever. And that's one of the things that as much as like I forecast and use goals and all those things for that, I do the same thing with my relationship with him.
Yeah.
And I actually have been doing like a ton of studying on, like things dads should be teaching their son and like that type of thing. And it's one of those things where that's incredibly important to me. And it is really, really hard to make those balances. Cause like I said prior, the truth of it is, if you're willing to outwork a lot of people, you'll get there. But how do you stop and balance that? I think it was like the thing that like taught me something about it was the fact that like I had bought him something for his birthday or something, and he was more interested in the box than he was the toy. Yeah. And it seemed silly, but what it showed me was like his value on having things isn't the same as what we would think it would be. Yeah. His value is the time that he spends with me. Exactly. And not only when it's time with me, it's uninterrupted time with me.
Right.
It's the time where I put my phone away and I get to just spend time with him. Yeah. I think that's the thing that I'm working on. It's certainly not fixed. I think my wife will watch this and say like, you could do a better job at it. But it's true, like it's super easy to get consumed in everything we're doing and it consumed in our career and not take that time and really just, read a book and do those things with him. That is incredible. But truthfully, my wife has really been the balance point to it. Is she has an incredible way of being able to make everything work time-wise, and I think that at different points in everybody's career, that happens where one's putting in more work than the other. And that's just part of it, and realizing what that balance is. And I think really too, it's getting together and sitting down and talking about it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't say, hey, like I need your help with this because I'm doing X. And there really just becomes a lot of, like frustration with it. And really, if you just talk about it, it helps. There's many times where it's my time to drop him off at daycare in the morning, and it's 3 days in a row, and my schedule gets really close in the morning. But that time with me dropping him off is some of my most important time in the week.
Right.
And that hour I come home and spend with him before he goes to bed at night, that's an hour that I look forward to every single day. So I really think it's really, really tough to make that balance work. I think the thing that helps people is if they're realizing it's important. And because so anything that is important to us, we find a way to get it done, right? And that's the thing that I needed to do is I had to find a way to set that time aside and also just be able to disconnect from work a little bit.
Yeah.
That's something that I've always, I think, struggled at different points in my career is just being like, okay, well, this can wait till tomorrow.
I still struggle with that. And I think a lot of people do. Yeah. I think a lot of people struggle because our business, the auto industry, is very, I like to call it like addictive gambling. It's fun, it's exciting, it's drama. I love everything about it. But it's very difficult sometimes to turn it off, and I think and I think that's why so many families sort of deteriorate. But I think today on the radio, I was just listening to this guy, and he's like, he's like, even though it's Valentine's Day, just make a date night for your spouse because it's important. Trust me, I know you do not want to be in the cesspool of online dating or anything like that. And I think most people will convince themselves that they're unhappy in the relationship, but they're not also dedicating the time to that relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it takes a lot of work. Just like anything, and I think the one thing too that is really easy to lose sight of is like as we have kids and children, right, and more children or things like that, it's really easy to get super focused on your child, which is awesome, but it also is like your marriage or relationship that goes with it,
right?
And I think like because I don't know if you ever see people that eventually like their kids move out and go to college, and then it's like, well, we haven't ever went to a movie together in 20 years without a kid with or whatever, and like that's one of the things that that I was just thinking about. Even today, right before I did the show, I went and had lunch with my wife, and setting aside those times that you can spend time together and be creative about it time-wise, like, hey, I've got an hour here today, I can make this work. Right. I think that goes a long way. And I would assume, you building your business, that's some of the same type of
let me just say this. If I spend a lot of time on a relationship, it saves me energy, right? Because I'm fighting or quarreling over who's going to do the dishes or who's going to help my son with his homework. Because I'm better at math and my husband's better at English. Okay. And he's got math homework. You got to help him. And I'm like, okay. And, so just like these little things, but the energy in that is it's much more to just like take care of, like, spend some time together. Then we're smooth sailing, because it takes energy to kind of butt heads or fight or disagree or whatever. And, and I feel like, okay, that's energy that I could be putting into my career or this and that. So it's like, well, why don't I just spend the time taking care of this first, and then I won't have to expel all this energy trying to prove that I'm right, even though I am.
Well, I mean, I think I heard it somewhere, and I don't even know where I had heard it, but you can either spend time on energy, or you can on the solution, or you can spend time on the problem, and what one's going to get you farther, right? So I would imagine, I was going to ask you the question. I don't even know if I did when you were on my show, but like, how do you have energy and time for everything? Like you put the business in, the marriage, children, like all that stuff is a lot. So
yeah, sometimes I'm not perfect in any way. With my son, I try to make it quality,
Sure.
quality, and I'm still not perfect at it by any means. My husband and we like to shop. So, that's his thing. He likes to shop, and we'll go shopping together. Or we like go out to breakfast when my son's in Hebrew school, or we spend that time together. So we try to make little time for each other. But at the end of the day, like, how I have the energy to do all this is like, right now I've been focusing more on my health.
Sure.
I don't do yoga like I wanted to, but I do it, like, at least I do a little stretching. I drink a lot of energy drinks. Like 3 a day. No, I also am very passionate about this.
Sure.
And so I think it's about taking your pain or your energy or your will or your drive, and you just go. And sometimes I run out of steam and I nap like once a month, and I'll spend a day napping, but that's pretty much how I do it. But I wanted to know, when let's switch up the conversation a little bit.
Sure.
I want to go to, so you're the director of sales. Can you tell me how many people are you managing? How many people do you have that report to you right now?
Yeah, I mean, so we've kind of changed a couple things, but I think there's roughly 20 salespeople and 4 business managers, and I work with 3 other sales managers and directors of their departments. Mm-hmm. And the greatest thing that a person has to look at and say is, like, having a great team to surround yourself with is huge. Right. And I would assume you would say the same thing at your company. Mm-hmm. Like, I've been really fortunate. I've worked with some really fantastic people that help make the whole deal work. I think that's the key. Is you have any business is having great people to surround yourself with, and guess what? Things happen and things are good. And that's something I've always been really fortunate enough, is being able to have really talented people around me.
How do you keep them motivated? Because this is what I really want to learn from you, right? Because, like, I'm working with a sales team. I got my sales manager, I'm running a company, but you're developing somebody, you're working them out. Like, how do you push them, or how do you show them the light, or how do you kind of rah these people into, doing their job? Because ultimately, like, I think management is a very difficult thing in the business. I think it's the most difficult thing. I think it's harder than selling. I think it's harder than anything like that. So tell me some tips on, like, how you kind of, keep these people motivated, keep them in line, keep them doing their job, keep them loving their job, Well,
I think one of the things, I think the whole statement of that is it's hard anywhere, right? And I look at myself as a manager early on in my career, and I didn't do any of those things. Like, I think the disconnect happens when we think people are motivated and are managed the same way we are.
Right.
Like us as individuals. So we say, well, if I read this book, it makes me motivated. Well, give somebody else that book to read, and they just think it's a waste of time.
Right.
So, I think building genuine relationships with the people you work with goes a really long way. Understanding what motivates them, what drives them, because, something that might motivate me or you might demotivate them. Like I can read a book and get an amazing idea and say, well, now I want to do this or do that and do that. And, I'm on fire, but I could have, one of my other team members read it and they say, hey, why'd you even make me read this?
Right.
I think, it's really interesting. Like the advice that I'd give anybody with it is just think about it as, about them. It's really easy to get center focused on it and say like, well, if people sell more things, that's great. And it benefits me and it benefits everybody. But the truth of it is like, it's about that person and that individual. And it's about what drives them. I think it's really number one, like it's the question you're talking about is something that most people fail at. And I think I spent the majority of my career failing.
Well, I want to learn. This is what I want to learn because, and I think a lot of people do out there, everybody has this number that they want to get to, and they have these team of people that help them get there. And it's like, okay, how are we going to get here? And I think if you had, some more people out there have these sales managers, and I watch sales managers, change jobs in this industry a lot. And I know that it's not always their fault, or maybe it is their fault. So, just all the sales managers out there, like, help them out, help them stay successful, Kiefer. They want to,
Well, number one, I tell them to listen to my podcast, but that's my own plug of the show. But and that's the point. Really, that's the point of the show was, everybody comes into things at different stages. I used to have this belief that you either become the manager you were managed by first, or was most impactful for your career, good or bad. So if you had a fantastic manager early on, and you're like, wow, that's the kind of manager I want to be. Then when a conflict comes up or something comes up, you relate back to that in your own psychology. If you had a terrible manager, let's say, you either want to be that and you don't even realize it, meaning like you run to that when there's an issue, or you say, I don't ever want to be like X. And I think that's the part that a lot of people don't understand. Like it's almost like, and you might recognize this as being a parent, but like there's times I say things that literally sound identical to what I know my father would say.
Right.
And it's the same thing a lot of times I see with managing people is, I'm so guilty of that. There's no way, like if you've been around the car business, you'll hear things. There's no way that gets passed on for that many generations. If it was good, unless it was something that was so profoundly impactful. But there's many times I listen to something, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was said in a car dealership 30 years ago, and it's still said today. And I think it's because we get into our heads and we say, well, this is how whatever was when I started. Or this is how it was. So that's just normal. Well, sometimes there's a different normal. And, my advice for any new manager is really just spend time learning about yourself.
Right.
And a lot of times we don't spend time learning about ourselves. We go coach other people, but don't dedicate time, energy, effort, money to growing ourselves. Because I kind of hit that point in my career where I said, hey, you know what? I want to learn as much about me as I can. And much about how I make decisions, as much about myself as how I coach people. And when you start spending time on that, I feel like then the way you change your coaching becomes phenomenal. Because you say, okay, well, oh man, I don't like it when somebody says this to me, or I don't like it when they say this. Well, then why are you saying it to somebody else?
Right.
And I think a lot of times as managers, there's two portions of it. So depending upon what industry you work in, you probably have some sort of, you have quotas or whatever it is that you want to hit. And trying to understand, I think early on I thought, well, no matter how hard I work, that can be the determination of it.
Right.
Until you learn that that's only going to last so long and you're going to burn yourself out.
Right.
So, I think that that's a constant struggle. And I'm sure there's team members of that will watch this interview and they'll say, I would hope that they agree with that too, is like, it's a developing thing, and just don't ever stop growing. Don't stop growing, surround yourself with incredible teams. And it's okay too, to spend time with other organizations and teams that do it really well.
Right.
And I'm sure you've had guests on your show that talk about that. I've interviewed some of mine that are really successful salespeople, and they say, well, hey, Kiefer, this is easy. And I'm like, what? Hold on, stop. I want to listen. and they'll say it's super easy and that anybody can do it if they want to. And like I said, I've been fortunate enough to be a part of a great team and a great organization and have phenomenal people to coach and mentor, and realize that, I want them to succeed and I want them to grow, and that's super important to me.
Yeah. One last question and then we'll wrap, because I really want to let you get back to your life, and I appreciate your time. So what about the underperformers? What if, you got this guy, he's just not getting it. How do you just cut the axe? Do you let him go? Like, what do you do to give him one more chance? Tell me about the guy that just is like, shows up on time, does the work, but he's not really going anywhere. How do you deal with somebody like that?
Yet again, my thinking on some of that stuff is changed over time, but, I really think there's more people that can succeed. There's more people that can succeed in sales than we think. And the question is how long people, are okay with it. Right. Like, I think a lot of times as managers, it's really our duty and obligation to give all the tools that we can and recognize, if somebody doesn't do well, that's on us. And I think a lot of times we don't do that. It's easy to say, well, they didn't do the training or they didn't do this. But the truth of it is, like, it's up to us. It's up to us to make sure our teams succeed. It's up to us to make sure that we're constantly exposing them to new training and new customer service and in different ways to keep that growing. I think that, like any industry, there's always people that do great and there's people that don't. And the truth of it is, if you spend all day trying to find people that are phenomenal, good luck. Like, you won't be able to find enough to have the team you want. Like, sometimes it comes down to just being able to build, to build on people. Like I was telling you early on, like there was many years where I wasn't really skilled in sales because I wasn't committed to it yet. So then I think as a manager, it's up to us to recognize that and see how we can coach members on our teams to realize that quicker and not let that duration of time, but I think the deal is more people can be better at sales and do better in sales if we just take the time to listen, understand the point that they're at in their career and what we can do to help them get to the next stage of it, because, I'm sure you've probably worked with or coached yourself, people in that same type of arena.
I'm impatient. And that's like, I'm serious. I'm impatient. I want everybody to go. And, and that's just the God's honest truth. I want my nickname is the slave driver, and, and I'm serious. I'm like, and I'm like, I'm not making you work that hard. They're like, oh no, she's slave driving, but I do have, an expectation of people. And, I feel like I have also like an intuition towards that too. I wanted to know if you ever, kind of have your gut feelings about people, or, how you go about that, or if it, sometimes I look at the person's energy too, are they bringing a positive vibe? Maybe if they're bringing that positive vibe and they're, taking a little bit longer, then I'm a little bit more patient than if they're bringing the negative vibe and they're not really,
Yeah. I think anybody that truly cares about their business recognizes that, and they say, look, if this is the right person, I want to surround or if I want to keep coaching this person and they're learning and they want to be there, different story than somebody that maybe just doesn't care about it. Right. Or maybe they're at a point in their life or career where it's not as important, and that's okay too, and the part is just being able to recognize it and say, hey, this is the expectation to be on the team, and this is what it takes. And that's great. And I think a lot of times though, I heard it really well one time when I was with another team. They told me like, hey, laying out clear expectations is the most important thing. And that was one of those things where like I'd probably heard it thousands of times, right? And at that exact moment was the exact time I needed to hear that. And it was like, bing, like I learned something. And I had somebody probably tell me that, thousands of times prior, but it was the first time for me where I said, maybe I should think about this differently.
Right. I think that's hard too, because you're like, well, and I want to be nice, but, Well, I guess it's okay to be late because, like it happens to everybody, but now it's becoming a thing. And now I've got to say something. And, what are some of the, give me an expectation, lay it out for me. I want a prime example.
Some of that I kind of can't talk about. I mean, my expectation when it comes to,
just broaden it out to management personally.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I always think it's interesting. I've worked with a couple managers years ago that would be upset when you or me were late and they were constantly late every day.
Right.
And just because we use that as an example about being late and being on time, that to me is always something that's been crucial to me.
Right.
Because I feel like your tone of how you start the day will be the determination of the success of your day.
Sure.
And the day where you're rushing to get ready and everything's running late, guess what? That's probably how the whole day is going to go unless you find a way to change it. Mm-hmm. So for me, being punctually on time is something that's super important to me when it comes to that. So that's always been an expectation of working with me or together or however you want to look at it, is if we've got a meeting or we've got something we got to do, we got to be on time for that. And that's important. And the thing with it is as a manager, though, you can't then be upset if you're always late and then you're holding your team members to a different standard. I don't know if you've ever had a boss like that, but that's incredibly tough. I'm late every day, but hey, you got to make sure you're on time for this one meeting 6 times a year. It's well, okay, but you're late every day.
Right.
And I think it's because at one point in my career, I was that person.
Yeah.
I was running late, and then I'd always be frustrated when people didn't show up on time. And it took basically, a couple employees over the time, team members call me out and say, hey, but you're always late.
Right.
And then yet again, my bing, I recognize maybe I should look at things differently. Yeah. And I think that you talked about the gut feel, that's something I've always said has been one of my critical powers is being able to recognize that even in myself, yeah, maybe I should work on this, or maybe this should get better, or maybe we should do this. And I think that that's something a lot of times people don't even spend any time recognizing,
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't get me wrong. I am 5 minutes late to everything, but I am not 25 minutes late anymore. So I always think there's room for improvement for sure. Yeah. Well, listen, final thoughts. Thank you so much for being on my show today. Any last words of advice that you can give to my audience? I would really appreciate it. And thanks so much.
Yeah, just keep growing. Keep growing your thinking, keep growing. When you think you've figured out whatever it is, keep finding a way to keep stretch. I always call it stretching my brain is what I would use it as. Just keep finding a way to keep expand your thinking, keep pushing yourself, keep when you realize maybe I'm getting stale at this, or maybe I'm not as creative as I were, just find a new way. Surround yourself with new people, surround yourself in a different environment that keep pushing yourself. And I really encourage anyone that listens to this to think that way, because it's vital. It's vital for them finding success in their career, is surrounding yourself with people, number one, that want to see you win, and number two, believe in you. So if there's anything I can ever tell anybody, those two things: surround yourself with people that believe in you, surround yourself with people that want you to win, and you'll find massive success with it. So
thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful to you. I'm a believer in your success, and I know you are mine, and I'm happy that you came on today. Honestly, means the world. So thanks, guys, for watching. And we'll share it again. And awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Let's catch up soon. Thanks.
Bye. All righty.